Hi, David here with Independence Live. I'm here with Tommy Ball in Cafe Rio. We're going to be discussing issues to do with the 45, which is a new concept which has come about since Friday after the referendum. We're going to look at new strategies as well, these ideas of a yes party, electing politicians on a yes ticket, and the different options are open to us. And we're also going to discuss the new media, the role of new media versus mainstream media, and any issues that arise from that. So, Tommy, could you introduce yourself to the viewers, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm Tommy Ball. I'm a member and activist of the Scottish Socialist Party in Glasgow. Previous to that, I was a member of the SNP, and I've campaigned for independence and social justice for all my adult life.
Okay, so we've got this idea of the 45. Now it's come about quite recently. It's really just, I think at this point in time, it's just a hashtag. It's not really like a consolidated idea. I don't even know if there's anybody that's like behind it, that like one person or anything. It's just sort of like an idea that's come about through social media. What are your thoughts on the 45 at the moment as a movement?
I think it's an excellent initial reaction to the disappointment of Friday morning. It's saying basically that we are defiant and that we're not just going to sit down and accept defeat here. That there's 45%, 1.6 million Scots have voted in favour of independence, and that we'll be listened to. But we also have to realise that if there's a 45, then by definition there's a 55. And we have to embrace and draw those people in, and we have to explain to them why they need to make the 45 bigger.
Okay. I mean, is it a divisive issue at the moment? I mean, is it something that we actually need to be quite careful about?
I think so. I don't think what we want to get ourselves into is a position where we're accepting another glorious defeat and then we're sort of ghettoising ourselves into the 45% who voted yes. We want to be the 45% who believe in independence, but we really have to appeal to those people in the 55 and draw them in. And by sort of reducing into ourselves, I don't think that's particularly helpful at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are trying to rename it already into the 45 plus. Other people saying we should just call it something completely different, like yes Scotland, or grow yes is another one.
I've also heard Empower Scotland, which I think is excellent, because that not only embraces the 45% of Scots, the 1.6 million of us who took the decision to empower ourselves, but it also says that we have to empower the 55% who voted no. Not that they're somehow wrong in the way they voted, not that they were stupid to vote no, not that they were malicious to vote no, but just that they weren't quite empowered enough, they didn't feel empowered enough to vote yes. And I think we have to give them that power, that we have to broaden their access to different forms of media rather than traditional media, and that we have to give them the information that they need. It's incumbent on us to change their minds, not incumbent on them to change their point of view.
Yeah. Do you think that, we don't want to criticise too much the work that we did, but do you think that moving forward from this point of view, do you think that really we need to educate people on how to be more media savvy, to think critically, etc.? Do you think there was enough for that, or do you think it was too much of a sort of dictation of we will tell you the reasons to vote yes, as opposed to we'll teach you how to understand it for yourself? Or was it a mix?
I appreciate what you're saying. I think there might have been a bit of here's why you should vote yes. But what I did think is that we empowered normal communities and citizens and working class communities like my own in Govan. We held mass public meetings to which people attended who've never come to any sort of political meeting before. I think if we're going to talk about a top-down campaign, the Unionist campaign is a perfect example of that. They had the BBC on their side, but the BBC doesn't chat doors. It doesn't hand out leaflets at street stalls, it doesn't speak at public meetings. I don't think the campaign we ran was a bad one at all. I think we should be tremendously proud. All of our activists, I mean particularly the younger ones who came out for the first time ever in a political campaign, should be immensely proud of what they achieved. To go from independence being 25% to 45% of the Scottish population is a magnificent achievement, and I think that's entirely down to the door by door, street by street, conversation by conversation we had, particularly in Glasgow, Dundee, and in the working class areas of Scotland.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the most important things, is we brought people in, 16 and 17 year olds who came into the world of politics And it's something that we're going to have to. I mean, first of all, what we did was we gave them hope, and then we sort of, in a way, as a society, showed them that you can't win. The corporate media will always beat you.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to really capture their energy and help them to continue, because they are, of course, going to become the young adults like us in a very short space in time and be the driving force in the next wave. So we're going to have to really sort of rethink what we understand about our political strategy at the moment. Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we have a look at this? There's this idea now of it's not quite a yes party singular, but an idea of a yes coalition. What can you tell us about that? What do you understand about it?
Well, I mean, the first priority now for Scotland and for working class people in Scotland and for working class communities up and down the land is to destroy the Labour Party. We've already thrown the Tories out, we've already destroyed the Liberal Party, and the Labour Party, which stood shoulder to shoulder with big business, with corporations, with the news media, with the Conservative Party, UKIP and the BNP, they stood against working class people, and there'll be a day of reckoning for the Labour Party for that. The Yes Alliance means that all three parties who took part in the Yes campaign, that's the Scottish Socialist Party, the Scottish Green Party and the Scottish National Party, we must continue the excellent work we did together. Because in the major working class communities in Scotland, we smashed the Labour Party last week. We completely undermined their authority. Every Labour MP and MSP in Glasgow, including their nominal leader, Joan Lamont, they lost to the Yes campaign in their constituency. We must carry that on. We must get rid of Labour, particularly in 2016, and we can only do that as a combined Yes Alliance. There's no point in the Scottish National Party, the Scottish Green Party, standing candidates against us in the Scottish Socialist Party, and we all take votes off each other and allow Labour to march through the middle and take the seats. This is a party, the Labour Party, which is a fanatical and unyielding enemy of the working class in Scotland, and it's our responsibility in all three Yes parties to stand up to that.
Okay, so how exactly do we do this? I mean, a lot of people are joining new parties now. The Green Party, Scottish Socialist Party, Scottish National Party, the three parties which have been put forward as the Yes parties. So I think the Green Party have taken on 4,000 new members. How many have you taken yourself in the Scottish Socialist Party?
The last I heard yesterday, it was 2,100 new members. We're actually on course to overtake the Scottish Labour Party in terms of membership if this rate continues.
Which I think would be quite appropriate, given that you're the Socialist Party.
Oh yeah. We represent the working class in Scotland. We're unashamed about that. We don't work with the Tories, we don't work with big business, we don't work with ASDA, and we never will.
And the Scottish National Party, what's the figure at the moment, do you know? Is it 60,000?
66,000, I believe, was the figure that I read a few minutes before we came on air.
Yeah.
That's enough to fill Murrayfield.
Yeah. And I think when in 2011, when the Scottish National Party became the biggest party in Scotland, it was 24,000. So from 24 up to 66. So what exactly is the actual strategy for the Westminster election in 2015? How does it work? I mean, the mechanics of it are the bits that the people out there in the general public don't really understand.
I think what we've got to do is sit down with each other. The SNP, the Socialist Party and the Green Party will have to sit down with each other. But it's not just a party thing, because we're going to have to sit down with people like Women for Independence, who've done an absolutely magnificent job. CND Scotland, Radical Independence Campaign, who've come from nowhere to be the story of this movement. We've got to sit down with them all and work out what sort of strategy we're going to have to employ to get Labour kicked out of Scotland in 2015. Whether that comes as a sort of SDP Liberal Alliance idea, we might hand out leaflets saying the SSP in this constituency says support the Green Party, or the Green Party stand a candidate as Green with SNP support, or whatever. I think there's a great appetite for moving on together. Certainly, I've got good relationships with many people in the SNP, and we've been in contact since before the result came in, actually, about keeping this Yes movement going. But we'll have to sit down together. We certainly can't allow, even though they're the largest party, we can't allow the SNP to dominate a Yes movement.
Yeah.
Because that was something that harmed the Yes movement during the campaign. That that the Unionists were able to portray the Yes campaign as Alex Salmond or the SNP.
Yeah.
And while recognising that the SNP do have the vast majority of activists, I think it was having us as wingmen that really helped the campaign take off.
Definitely, yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what the strategy is.
No, that's okay. Yeah, that's fine.
We're definitely going to sit down. We're definitely going to talk about it, starting on Sunday with a written conference in the south side of Glasgow.
Okay, so that's basically where these ideas are going to become consolidated. Are these conferences with the movements which have been in motion since the beginning of the referendum campaign?
Yeah, I think it's going to. I mean, there's going to have to be, as we say, we're going to have to sit down and talk quite seriously about where we go from here. The last thing we need is to have infighting amongst ourselves. I don't think we're going to get that, because anyone who was involved in the campaign, you would have known that the camaraderie between SNP activists, Socialist Party activists, Green Party activists, those of no party, it was brilliant. And I heard someone describing it as what it must be like to be in the army, that sort of camaraderie you have. They turn into your comrades.
Yes.
And we've gone through something magnificent together, the Yes campaign. And I think we want to keep that going. I was really gratified to see Stuart Woolsey today in his sort of pitch to become deputy leader of the SNP, saying that it was his main priority to keep the Yes campaign together. And he recognises, of course, that it's not just the SNP. And we know that. We know it's not just about the Scottish Socialist Party. We're a small party, we're growing. The Greens are a small party, they're exploding. I mean, 345% increase in their membership in a week. We're not going away. We won this campaign, we lost the referendum. We're not going away because we've won the argument. We forced the British to concede the principle that the Scots have the right to decide our constitutional future. Now that's not just a one-off thing. Just because the United Kingdom voted Conservative in 2010, that doesn't mean there's a Conservative government in perpetuity. They have to go back to the people and renew that mandate. Just as in time we can go back to the people and renew our mandate for independence.
Indeed. Talking of new movements, I'm going to move to that chair over there, so give me 1 second. I bet you this is going to work out to be far more comfortable. What do you think about that?
Your arm seems a lot less drippy now.
That's more like what the viewers are used to. Awkward closeness.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to have a look at this idea of a new media versus mainstream media. So it would be fair to say that the mainstream media essentially owned by millionaires serving the interests of the rich. And what happened during this campaign was that the agenda of the rich was played out en masse through televisions and newspapers. There was a new media which played out on the platform of social media, which to a very, very large extent allowed for peer-to-peer interaction, where just to give a very realistic example, we might be sitting in a cafe like this, having a conversation with your friends, but one person in the conversation can correct everyone on a misnomer, for example, the currency. One person can say, no, that's not true, because they read an article in Wings Over Scotland or Newsnet. So where do we go from here in terms of the new media? Are there concerns about the new media as having a lack of editorial process?
I'm not convinced there's a lack of editorial process. People are self-editing because we're part of a movement and we don't want to do as individuals anything which may damage that movement. So if you want to say something particularly horrible about Jim Murphy, for instance, you're going to come back and stop yourself saying it, because you know that's going to be taken up by this sort of cybernet nonsense in the newspapers. I mean, the first thing about media, I think it's generally accepted that the BBC had a particularly bad referendum. They debased themselves, they debased their founding principles, and they, on many occasions, embarrassed themselves. All you need to do is look at your normal edition of Reporting Scotland at any point in the lead up to the referendum. They gave the Unionist campaign the right to the first statement every time. When we would come back, it would be the Yes campaign claims, the Yes campaign says. Whereas if something came out from the Unionists or from the British government, it was presented as fact. Scotland will not have a currency union. but the Yes campaign claims that Scotland can use the pound.
Yeah.
That had to be countered, and the rise of citizen journalism has countered that to some extent. What you've got is Scotland is now the most politically aware country in Western Europe, possibly the most politically active country in Western Europe, because people have actually they've seen the BBC, they've seen every single daily newspaper in Scotland, none of which is owned by Scots, coming out in favour of the status quo, coming out in favour of the continued big business support of the British government. And citizen journalists got angry about that, and they hated that. They absolutely hated it, which was why there was so many personal attacks on citizen journalists. We've seen the quite hysterical reaction to Stuart Campbell daring to have his own views. I might not agree with many of Reverend Campbell's views, but that doesn't mean he's not got the right to have them. And it was this, as I said, it was a hysterical, how dare this man reach 180,000 people?
Yeah.
And there was complete distress there.
A demonisation.
Yeah, absolutely. They just couldn't understand that their one trump card was that the Unionist campaign had complete control over the dissemination of information through a Unionist prism, but also through a prism that big business is always right and must be listened to, through this corporatist prism. They couldn't understand it. They somehow lost control of that to a ragtag bunch of lefties, basically, and that was fantastic to see.
So, do you think at the moment we understand new media well enough, and we have educated ourselves? From an Independence Live point of view, we've had a very steep learning curve as to just how you go about doing this. Do you think we're now at the stage where we can actually embrace new media as the way forward for citizen to citizen education and dissemination of information without being something which is dangerous and something which goes off in directions which we don't want to go in?
I believe so. If you look at the reach alone of social media, David, the Scotsman distributes something like 10,000 copies per day. If I tweet something from the Scottish Socialist Party's Twitter account, that can reach 100,000 people in a day when it comes to retweets, that sort of thing. Yeah. Social media is something that and you guys in Independence Live have managed to harness it. But I don't think even you guys can conceive of how important social media is going to be in the next election and when we come back to the people in maybe 5 years' time. Social media, people don't want to sit down at a defined time anymore and watch what the BBC want to tell us. People want to get their news on their way to work. They want to choose, what sort of news they want to read. People are fed up of Jackie Bird, lecturing them and howling abuse at the First Minister. They don't want that anymore. They don't want Torquil Crichton telling them what to think in the Daily Record every day. That's why, as the traditional media, with the honourable section of the Sunday Herald, which has gone up 11%, the traditional media is absolutely plummeting in terms of its reach to viewers and readers, while social media is rising and rising and rising. It seems that everyone in Scotland is now on Twitter. I'm sure that's not the case, but everyone in political life in Scotland seems to have a Twitter account, and that enables them to reach directly to people. The Scottish Socialist Party, for instance, are unable to get into the media. We weren't invited to a single televised debate. That's because our opinions are dangerous to the established order of things. But what we can do is reach people through social media, and I think that's part of what's been responsible for the explosion in our membership in the past week, where it's more than doubled.
Excellent. So, okay, just to sort of conclude on that one, we sort of an agreement here that we pretty much continue the way that we have done. We just build on the processes that we've learned from, and we continue, and we will actually just get that extra level of support from Scottish society. Just another point on that is, of course, that it was the 55 and onwards, 55 and upwards, that were where we were losing the vote. Obviously, demographics shift with time.
Yeah.
I think with those two the factors taken into the equation, do you think we're on course for an independent Scotland within perhaps 10 years?
Oh, absolutely. What you had is the generation which took everything and left nothing. A generation which put their bus passes ahead of the future of their grandchildren. I don't blame those people. There was a lot of selfishness in their decision, but selfishness is a perfectly valid reason to vote. But what their problem was is that my granny doesn't have Twitter. She does read the Daily Records. My granddad doesn't have Facebook, but he does watch the BBC News at 6 o'clock. That generation is going to move on, and they'll be replaced by this politically engaged, socially engaged younger generation. I mean, you're talking these 17 and 18-year-olds and under that age who came out and campaigned with us for a yes vote. These are kids that haven't known a world before mobile phones. They're a generation which haven't known what it's like not to be able to instantly communicate with their friends on Facebook. They've never had to phone a house and anxiously hope that the mother or father doesn't answer. These are people that are politically and socially engaged, and that's the way that it's going to be, even more so in the next generation. I don't see any reason why, given the natural depreciation of the older generation and the replacement with a newer generation, I don't see why we can't win next time. We were 190,000 votes away from winning this time from no people turning to yes. That's not a lot of people. That's 4 Scotland home games. It's not a lot of people. As that older generation moves out and is replaced by a younger generation, we can win this next time. And I don't see any reason why, given that the right set of circumstances, such as a yes victory in 2015 in the general election, a yes victory in 2016 in Holyrood, and then in 2017, if the United Kingdom votes to leave the European Union and Scotland votes to stay in, we are not going to be wrenched. This young generation of ours who've grown up with Europe being a positive thing, we're not going to be wrenched out of our European Union. And I think that would give us the impetus to hold another referendum, perhaps in 2018, given the 2.5-year negotiating timetable. No reason at all why we can't be independent by 2021.
Okay, well, that's given us food for thought. Onwards and upwards. Is there anything else you want to contribute before we switch off?
No, not at all. I just want to thank everyone for the work that they put in this referendum. It's been absolutely fantastic. These guys have done a great job. And everyone else on social media is the same. These are people that have given up their time to try and make sure that the BBC don't have it their own way, and contributed in some small way to the success of the referendum this time round.
Okay, Tommy Ball, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thanks very much.